Okay, welcome to the third edition of the Awaken with Shadow Work podcast. I'm joined today with by Mohammad Abushindi, who's in Jordan in the Middle East, and he's joining us today to discuss alchemy with me and with its relation to shadow work. So welcome, Mohammad. How are you?
Hello, fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. The first thing I'm going to mention is the way that I actually got in contact with you, because
Yes.
I was looking on one of the sites on Facebook for some inspiration. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was a Jungian site actually, and I found some really great posts that you'd put up on alchemy, and I thought to myself, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And I love alchemy anyway, so it's something that I looked into, especially the Negredo stage, which I was kind of stuck in for quite a long time in 2012, 2013. So when I saw some of your posts, I thought I have to get this guy on my group, and I just felt that, I don't know why, I've never actually gone onto another group and said join my group for the purpose of your great posts. That's
Yes.
you're the only person that I've done that with. So but yeah, so it's been interesting. It's been also interesting to know that that you have been on a shadow work journey yourself as well.
Yes, indeed.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about when that started and how you got started with that?
Okay, actually, the path started anyway, or the calling, as we say it. It was a wound from a relationship. Yes, as I told you on a phone call.
Yeah.
And it was very devastating because apparently she was a psychopath, an emotional manipulator, or whatever you want to call it. So the damages were severe, and then I experienced what's called the dark night of the soul, or the ego death.
Yeah.
Yes, from that point, I I had to meet myself or discover myself. I had to know that I have a world within me when I start to experience, or to know that I have also intuition and how it works, and my inner workings also. When I had also to experience the dreams, synchronicities, which is the repetitive numbers at that point. Yeah, so the healing journey began. Actually, I had to work on my ego because it was eventually destroyed. So the self-development books was great aid to develop a healthy ego and establish a new value system at certain point. Then through synchronicities also, I got to Jungian psychology to understand the archetypes, the ego, the self, and the animus. Yeah, it was a long journey actually. But the moment I was introduced to shadow work was also in a synchronistic event, because it was 2 years ago, and I started to have many synchronicities with the girl that I had a relationship with. And I thought it was over because many years passed and I have done tremendous work upon it, but it eventually was not. So it was I was meeting her on a synchronistic level because she's my neighbor. But when I'm walking out the building, she come across the street. That repeats many times. So I said, "Hold on, there's something there." So yeah, there's something to be worked on because you don't meet her for accident or coincidence. Yes, through a friend I have on Young Group on Facebook, she told me, introduced me on the shadow work, and that I have to integrate my shadow, and maybe she's also lurking in my shadow, so I had to release or rise up the surface on the emotions I had felt and the experiences with her. So my journey began. But what I have to begin, as Jung said, is the best way to approach the unconscious is the creative way. So in that regards, I had to stimulate my unconscious and do like practicing the active imagination. So my friend sent me actually an old musical notes, which is like it goes back to the Ottomans or the past Turkish civilization.
Yeah.
Yes, and through it, through meditation and that active imagination, I was able to raise to the surface some of these events and emotions that, for me, was forgotten. But yeah, we know they were sunk back to the unconscious. So the journey begins. Afterwards, I realized it's not only the relationship that I had to work on but my childhood memories. Of course, as myself, I had a dysfunctional father. So you have a combination of positive mother complex and a negative father complex. So that what affected me in the way I attract women into my life, and how I have anima projection on them also. So yeah, it's tremendous work actually. Took me almost 5 to 6 years working on that till
Wow.
now. I'm still not done yet, I can call myself, but yes, I'm on the final steps actually.
Okay. Mohammed, you know, you said at the very beginning, I mean, look, what you've just told me about your shadow work journey is, you know, very similar to mine. And what you said about your ex, so you kept on bumping into her the whole time. So you knew that there was something more you had to learn from her. And it was her who
Yes,
said to you, who introduced you to the idea of shadow work. Is that correct?
exactly.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Make all difference.
I mean, look, if you were not as kind of perceptive and hadn't really looked into your inner world as much, you may have seen that and just thought, you know, just thought nothing of it, perhaps. But that's the sign, isn't it? It's a sign that something more has to be worked on. Mohammed, I want to ask you about your
Absolutely.
ego death situation. I mean, how did you experience that ego death? How did that happen for you?
Honestly, it's like a dramatic scene. As- and at that time, I was in contact with her, but I realized that there was something wrong. So intuitively, I started searching for any psychological diseases or dysfunctions or disorders. And yes, I'm bumped into psychopathy, and I have read the symptoms, and it fits 100%. So at that time, it's still the attachment is still there. So I can get rid of her just because I knew what she is. At that time, I was desperate, no way out. Mm, I can't simply move on, just forget it because it's overwhelming. See, you know, you deal with it or you can't, just can't. So that's the last scene was I hugged her, and I know she was the one hurt me and was crying. And like when I stepped back, I looked into her eyes and that saw that emptiness in her eyes. So yes, I can spot them by that look. Actually, it's like their signature sign.
Hmm.
Yes, they're empty. The soulless look. Yes, that was the rock bottom I have reached. So I start to build up. It's like actually it was very bumpy journey and difficult because one of their techniques is like keeping the strings attached. Like when she left you for a year, then she texts you back. So you don't work on it. So the wound opens up again and you start to experience the past emotions. So I had to deal a lot of stuff because she's my neighbor also, and can hear her laugh the next day in the garden, and I'm sitting in my room crying. It's like unbelievable. Yes. But
Oh no.
all was a price to know myself and to set me on the path. So I am thankful whatever happened to me eventually because in the past years I have been coming back. It's like there's no way you can learn from the wound at one time. You always with the years passing and your consciousness expanding, you come back to discover a new layer.
Yes.
So the most bigger question was why it happened, why that way, why I have felt so much pain. And when I look around me, my society, my friends, like no one had similar experiences so far as I know.
What?
So it's like you feel yourself. Yes, exactly. I have none known when some had some similar experiences, but yes, there was ones on different levels or different areas of their lives. But regarding relationships, it was difficult for me. Yes,
Mhm.
and I had difficulty also to explain it, what I've been feeling to my friends or the people close to me, because yes, they can keep up with me, but none will actually know how I felt that way. So I kept it to myself at that time
Mhm.
and started my work. Yes.
Right.
And regards to the why, we go back to it. Yes, because meaning it's what makes a whole difference. When you know why that happened and you why what you're gonna experience next, you have the answer or to your life, your purpose, and why you are here. So, as Nietzsche said, he he who has a why to live for can almost bear anyhow. So
Right.
that's it. Yes.
That's brilliant.
Mhm.
In terms of your um, your synchronicity. So, how did your synchronicities manifest for you?
On many levels, from numbers, repetitive numbers.
Mhm.
Actually, I tried to search for it in all over the internet, but actually I didn't find a meaningful answer because you can see about the new age stuff, like the angelic numbers, but it was too easy. I didn't like get to it actually. But there's an indication whether we can know what the numbers really means. It's an indication when they repeat on frequent time, there's an inner work that must be done.
Okay.
Something needs to rise up to the surface. Like it's a call from the self to work on it, to get inwards. Yes. And it never failed me actually.
It's unusual because I think I put on a few posts that say something along the lines of when you start to notice the unseen, it also starts to notice you, and then you step into a world where everything has meaning and there's magic in everything. You know, especially when you start to go through those synchronicities that keep on coming all the time. I remember a time where my energy was so heightened, or maybe it was my anxiety, but I kind of felt as well that there was a time where my energy, I had energy in my hands. I could feel something in my hands. At the time I was kind of having lots of feeling that I knew things that I shouldn't really know, like kind of feeling that I had some extrasensory sort of ability.
Yes. And
it's just strange when that happens, because the whole world just starts to look different, doesn't it?
Yes, of course. And you were accurate when it's described as magic. Because it is, yes.
Yeah.
All these events, synchronicities, and you know that you keep up with your inner work and the external events that comes to you. It's like it's the best life you can ever have, actually.
So is that? Do you think that's is that the connection between spirit and matter then that they talk about in alchemy? Do you think? Is that it? Is that the part where you have that synchronicity, where you have that kind of you're living on this world, but also you feel like you have some kind of connection to the outside as well, or to the I don't know what you call it, of the other realms, or
the higher realms, you can call it.
It's funny. I kind of stay away from a lot of these. I'm involved in. Well, not involved. I've joined quite a few groups that kind of talk about New Age and metaphysical and angel numbers and all this kind of stuff. But again, like you said, it all sounds quite fluffy and doesn't. I stay away from it on my group, Awaken with Shadow Work, because I don't want. I want some kind of logic and reason in everything that I'm doing now. where I hadn't before, and in a way it's a way for me to it's a way for me also to exercise my masculinity as well, but by finding some logic and reason, some philosophy and some psychological reason behind all things. And so I tend to stay away from those kind of posts and from those kind of groups, but at the same time there is still something. There is something that's still real in them, in some of the messages that they give you. Like you just said about the angel numbers. I've never been into this whole idea of angels for some reason. With all of my tarot and Reiki and whatever, I could never get into angels. There's something a little bit too sort of airbrained about it. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. I don't mean to offend anyone, but that's just how when I meet other women who are interested in angels, they're usually away with the fairies as well. You know, they're usually not very sort of grounded and rooted. And I guess I just didn't want to be like that in a way. So, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So how are you, with the work you've done on your ego, how were you able to sort of become to gain a more healthy ego? How did you go about doing that? What was your thinking behind that?
Okay, first of all, when I was in that process of forming a healthy ego, because actually it was the reason that I got into this relationship was my poor boundaries. Exactly. And also regarding for example the suppressed also emotions, which is also related to shadow work, suppressed characteristics and traits in my character, which was also taken advantage of by her. Yes. So at that point, what I have learned after finishing that self-development self-development books and Napoleon Hill lectures and these other authors, I realized that they teach you about philanthropy, to give back to your society and not to focus on yourself. It's not like your life goal will be something personal or personal gain. and everyone you come in contact with who will benefit you, you also have to give him back. So yes, it was a good start because it was healthy, I can say, but to some extent. And then I got to the beginning of spirituality when studying like frequencies, vibrations, and brain waves, and see this stuff. Yes, get me into meditation and learn how to look within myself and also to calm down my thinking and these mental processes that you have to control. But through the course of time, yes, experience is what makes your ego healthy, because when you experience some sort of projections on your friends or your co-workers, for example, and then you reflect on them, you know what's yours and what's not. So yes, the experiences become situations from outer situations that shapes your ego. If you stay, of course, reflective and you have a journal to write it down all down, so you can track down your progress, what's changed, what's not, and then you can see patterns. When you perceive patterns, then you can understand what it's really all about.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question now about your anima. So, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of really thorough shadow work, and you're obviously very well read. So, and I often get questions about anima and animus, especially animus integration. But I've recently put on a great post. Well, I thought it was a great post about anima for men, and it kind of it was in Carl Jung's book. Symbols of the Self, I think it was Symbols of the Self. You find it, I've got it here, and it was kind of talking about sort of like the projections that men have on women and stuff. And I'm just wondering how in practical terms are you able to take back those projections? Because obviously, you know, that a lot of the time, I guess, I mean, they're unconscious.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, how were you able to do that? Can you tell me about your sort of anima integration and what you did to try and find balance within yourself?
Yes, of course. Honestly, at first, when you're projecting, you don't know that you are projecting at first hand. Yes, exactly. So you have to experience the emotions related to it and the pain accompanied by the delusion that you were projecting on that person or the projection carrier or that woman. Yes, exactly. It's a very, very painful process because you realize that it's not there. It's you. It's been in you. And actually, these traits that the woman attracted to you is the same traits that you have integrate for yourself, like for your feminine traits that you need to integrate also. So it's like a mirror. You're mirroring yourself. Yes, exactly. At that time, just experience it, the pain, the suffering related to it, and there is dissolving of these projections. But I was not consciously that I am dissolving the projections. But after the initial experience of the separation from that woman, I came back to the whole process, the whole experience, and start to analyzing it single one by one, and realize that yes, I have what need to integrate and what's my fault and what's like relating to my boundaries. Why I had to when stop, when to proceed. Yes, it's a very, very painful experience actually.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
and
is.
I realize I have experienced it twice, as much as I know. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, shadow work, I've always said, is not for the faint-hearted. It's something that you have to be very you have to take your time with it as well. You have to be very careful because it can swallow you up. And what I'm always kind of a bit worried about with some people who come to shadow work is that that they're going to go so deep within themselves that they're going to kind of they could even lose themselves, and you know, that's part of the reason why I set up the group, is it's supposed to be somewhere where you can kind of get support when things get tough, and you know, we're all supposed to kind of support each other in that, and some people do use it for that, and a lot of people don't, but everyone's on a different path, and everyone is in a different stage of their journey, and sometimes I found with some people they go through really difficult times, and then I might not hear from them for a couple of weeks, and then so they've maybe had a bit of time off, because you have to really be careful, mind yourself, and take care of yourself when you're going through this process. Now, listen, Mohammad, I'm going to have this as the first part, and then we're going to come back again for the next part 2. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'll speak to you then. Thanks.
Thank you.